his career, R-II School District, and then came to Camdenton as a teacher. She began his administrative career at the Shelby County R-IV School District and was a longtime high school principal here in Camdenton. And last year, he became the superintendent of schools in Camdenton, and I know going into his second year, he's got a lot of things going on in the district right now. So Brett, thanks for being with us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. So a couple of things. Dr. Atkins speaking about that in the past, looking around and I see Grover, Mr. Player, we're on the board when I was hired as principal. That's been a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it. Dr. Hatfield is here. So if you have like criticisms or complaints, maybe they'll help own those because they were part of bringing to But I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and serve our community in our district. And so the other thing I realized is I did print out some notes, but I had some specific things I wanted to share. I should have printed this in larger font, so bear with me. First, thanks for having me today. As Dr. Matthews said, we do have a number of things going on in the district, so this is a good opportunity to get in front of you and share the exciting things that we have going on. First of all, I think last year at this time when I shared with you, I talked about that we had just been approved for a FEMA shelter here in our district. And with that, our plan was and still is to construct an early childhood center that's attached to Dogwood Elementary. And so I go back there because our plan at that point was, our hope was that it's just maybe a few months to start progress. Well, with being a FEMA shelter and a little bit under not a little bit, but a lot of it under the guidance and the mercy of government, when government shuts down, things get paused. And so we're probably not as far along as we would have liked to be. We'd like to see progress right now. However, this summer, we did get official approval, final approval, so we can submit for bids. And just this Monday, 2 days ago, we accepted our general contractor bid with the Witt Associates out of Springfield to construct our early childhood center. So we're very excited about getting that off the ground and getting that started. So hopefully we'll see some progress very, very soon. And that early childhood center is going to include 8 classrooms. And so we're talking the preschool specifically, but 8 classrooms, a multi-purpose room, some office space for that. And then additionally, and I'll point to Dr. Hatfield, also because of some historic planning and things of that nature, we're also able on our own parts, fund locally. We are going to start working through and taking care of some structural things at Dogwood Elementary. So Dogwood Elementary, as you all know, it's a very, very old building, and not just old, I mean, there's more to it than that, but some structural things we need to deal with. So in addition to the FEMA part, we're going to demo 4 classrooms that would be right there next to the FEMA, and we're going to build those back. And so hopefully we can do that at the same time is the goal, and start the progress to essentially replace Dogwood Elementary as we can, without having to put voters for more money, and so we can fund that locally without asking for more funds. And so that's the plan for that. So very excited about that. Timeline for that, we're looking roughly right at November 1st of 2027. So 18, 20 months down the road, we hope to be able to make that transition. Ideally, like I said, ideally next summer we would be ready to open that early childhood, because some of the delays we had on the front end, our goal would be to make that shift over Christmas break and be able to move in January. And so that's our plan for that. And so very excited about that, getting our students starting off on the right foot in preschool and expanding that. So a couple of the things we have going on. Speaking of preschool, we're also expanding preschool opportunities to our outlying buildings at Osage Beach Elementary and Hurricane Neck. That there was historically preschool there, and just some things that needed to change. Preschool wasn't there, but we are instituting preschool back, so we'll have 2 sections of preschool at Osage Beach and 1 section at Hurricane Neck. So then part of our I keep talking about facilities. Part of that whole process too, as we build our FEMA structure and we work to demo some of Dogwood and build that back, you may wonder, well, where are we going to put those students, right? because Dogwood is extremely full. It's really at over capacity. So in making all of that transition, we've also reconfigured our grade level structures in our buildings. So Dogwood, instead of being preschool through second grade, it's going to be preschool, kindergarten, and first. And then second and third grade will be our Hawthorne building. Fourth and fifth will be Oak Ridge. And then our middle school will serve 6, 7, and 8. So those of you that have been around a while, you know that what's now middle school used to be high school. It used to be 4 grade levels on that. So we had to work with our architect to make sure that we could handle that capacity for 6, 7, and 8. We'll have about 845 students in 6, 7, and 8. So we're very confident we can do that. Our middle school administration and maintenance folks have done a great job of preparing that building for the upcoming school. No major changes at high school or LCPC, but there are some major grade level reconfigurations going on in the district. We're very excited about the opportunities that will give our kids and also allowing us to address needs as they come. So I've talked about facilities, and the final thing I'll say on that, we're also hopefully in September are going to approve on a long-term facilities plan. So we're working with our architect there, and we've been working on this for several months, 6 to 8 months, to put together a long-range facilities plan to address needs of the district for the future. So we're talking 10, 15 years out. You can do it all at once, of course, but with that facilities plan, we want to make sure we prioritize needs, not just focus on wants. We need to focus on our needs and then make sure that our finances are lined up where we can tackle those as we can. So trying to get a good plan in place so we can tackle those facility needs as necessary. Academically, let's talk about academics. It's why we do what we do, right? Academically, obviously our goal is to provide students the education they need to be prepared for not only the next grade level, but life beyond high school. We're having a conversation over here about college, career, workforce, life in general. So that is our goal. Grade level, that they're prepared for the next grade level, but they're also prepared for life after high school. As you know, we have a lot of opportunities for our students. I want to mention our Lake Prairie Technical Center. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and the number of opportunities our kids get there as well. With that, another focus for us this year, I say this year, but we're just really trying to be more intentional about our focus on literacy for students. And so you think about how that ties into preschool and getting those students started off on the right foot. We've got some needs that we need to address with literacy, making sure we're providing students what they need, but also providing support for our teachers so they can provide the appropriate instruction for kids so they can read and write. Because obviously all those things I just mentioned, whether it's college, career, workforce, life, we need to make sure they have a solid foundation. So that is an extreme focus for us for the upcoming year as well. Let's see. New teachers. So this is kind of timely. Our new teachers came in yesterday. They started their 3-day process for onboarding and orientation for our district. We have right about 39 new teachers to our district this year. What's interesting, I think 15 of our new teachers are returning alumni in Camdenton. So that's pretty cool to see. Obviously we don't want to hire just because they're from here, but I think it says a lot about our district, our community. We have students that recognize the value of education. Obviously, we've had people that have positively influenced them and they're willing to come back and serve their school and their communities. We're excited about that. We also, I want to talk just a little bit about recruitment and retention of teachers. As you probably know and have heard, over the past 6, 7 years, really since 2020 and COVID, we've seen a really significant challenge with recruitment and retention of teachers. And so I will say, I think we're on an uptick for getting more folks into the field of education. And this year we had a really good recruitment year for new staff. One of the things we did to help with that, and Dr. Hatfield knows this, we historically, we allow a maximum of 10 years of experience that a teacher can bring in on our pay scale. And totally understand why we did that. Finances, we have to consider all those things. But what was making it difficult over the past 3 years, some of our neighboring districts have allowed more years of experience to be brought in. So you think about school the Osage and Lebanon, those that neighbor us, that makes it pretty challenging for us to compete. So one of the things we did, we extended that this year, and we're allowing 15 years of experience versus 10. Now, some of the questions we get, or one of the questions we've gotten well, hey, we're gonna increase that another 5 next year. I don't know that answer yet. We have to take a hard look at our finances, and our goal obviously would be to continue to do that so we can be competitive. Personally speaking, I think if we could get to that 20 mark, that makes us a lot more competitive with those neighboring districts, so we can recruit and pay quality teachers, because, you know, there's nothing more important than a teacher in the classroom. So we want to make sure that we're recruiting and retaining the very best. Looking ahead to the school year, again, we had this conversation over here. Our fall sports started Monday, and so our fall sports have kicked off along with the heat. And so we have to keep an eye on that, making sure we're keeping everybody safe and healthy there, but we're excited about our upcoming fall sports season. And all teachers will be in district next Monday, the 17th, for trainings and meetings and things of that nature in preparation for their classrooms. And then our students come Tuesday, the 25th. So looking forward to a great school year. As Dr. Henson said, we have a lot going on, but we're excited about these changes, because I really think at the end of the day, this is what's going to be best for our students and our district and our community, and we're trying to do that the right way. So I just appreciate the opportunity to share with you the things that are going on in the district. Always open to that conversations and questions if you have them as well.
So, you know, I grew up in Johnson County, Kansas. You know, we went through the process of getting all these schools, you know, like you're doing. We got this, it's a, you got a basic thing up there, especially with busing. Oh my God, it's crazy. Anyway, what do you see as far as incoming from the bottom up of enrollment? Is that growing in our community, or is that shrinking?
It's not. And when Dr. Hatfield called me, I think I asked you this question when you called me about us meeting today. The enrollment historically back, 18 years ago, I think it was 4,200. Right now, we're sitting at about 3,650. And so for our district, and so it's gone down a bit. And so, we try to put our finger on why. Personally, I think some of those things are, I think there are a number of things. I think you see more students, more parents rather, homeschooling students. I think that's a piece of private school. So one of the things we need to do is make sure we're putting ourselves out there to know, hey, you get a quality education here. Totally understand parents want to homeschool kids and for personal reasons. I get that. We want to make sure that we're putting ourselves out there and that we are an excellent option. The other thing that we talk about a lot is cost of living here at the lake. And it's not cheap, and you compare to other places. So I don't know. Those are a couple of things that come to my mind to give you a correct answer. Our enrollment has gone down. Now, it's fairly steady the past few years, but it's not increasing. And I can tell you, back to the cost of living, and this is a frustration for me. I remember a couple of years ago as high school principal, we were interviewing positions, and I think it was a social studies position that I had open, and had a really great candidate, young candidate, right out of college, and we thought she's going to be phenomenal. She had verbally accepted the position, but then a few days later, a week later, she calls me and she can't accept the position. She said, I can't find anywhere to live that I can afford. And so she said, I can find places in Lebanon, apartments, things like that. She said, I just cannot find somewhere I can afford. Parents were in Springfield. We lost her. So I think maybe from an employee standpoint and from a community standpoint, cost of living is one of the things we need to look at too.
Go ahead. So
Principals have time to sit in the classroom with new teachers to recruit them and monitor them.
Absolutely, and that's, we talked about this last week in our administrative meeting. So we've got building principals. Obviously, we want them first and foremost to be the instructional leader of their building. And so we also have a couple of learning and assessment coordinators. And so when I talk about new teachers, these 3 days that we're in right now, they're providing onboarding support, letting them know all the systems and structures that we have in place. But then when it gets down to the classroom, we want administrators in those classrooms to provide support. And really the conversation that we had last week, we need to get in there early and often, because if we recognize things that we can help correct or help foster and help support, we need to invest there. Because that's extremely important, especially for those teachers that are first and second year at college and they're trying to be successful and maybe they don't know what they don't know yet. Because let's face it, it'll be probably any career, but sitting through coursework is different than actually doing the work. And so we want to make sure we're providing that standard.
Preschool, what age?
So we have 3-year-olds is half day. Okay, and 4-year-olds is full day. And one of the things, so we also have early childhood special education. And so when we talk about preschool here on campus, if there are students with special needs in preschool, those will be adopted. Our outlying buildings at Hurricane Deck and Osage Beach, that's for 4-year-olds only, so full day.
Who's qualified?
Good question. So people can apply to do that, and sometimes there's a waiting list. I can tell you right now, across the district, I think we have currently 4 students total on a waiting list.
How do you?
They can apply, so if you're special ed, if you're early childhood special ed, you get preference. And then we have peer groups, so we have peer models in there, so employees, children can apply for that as well. And really, then we take application after that. And I'm glad you asked that, because one of the misconceptions I think is that if I want my student in preschool, it's the same as having a 3rd grader, that they just automatically, and that's not the case. Now, we hope to get there with the expansion of our early childhood center and preschool. It'd be great if we could just take everybody into possibly. But they need to apply, and there's a process that we work through, and they can contact us if they're interested in that.
This question is actually not about this year, but next year.
Okay,
Could you talk a little bit about the resurrection of the Ozark Conference?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So the Ozark Conference, which was in existence when Dr. Hadfield was in this seat. So, oh gosh, what year are we in? This is year 2, right?
Right.
So those of you that may remember the old Ozark Conference, it was, I'm gonna be put on the spot, it was us, Lebanon, Rollo, Waynesville, and then Springfield high schools, the 5 Springfield high schools. I think that's it. Remind us.
Well, I mean, you go way back, you have West Plains.
West Plains and Joplin. So yeah, it is Joplin and West Plains. I forgot about those because it's kind of the fall. But 2 years ago, and this was a lot larger conversation in the schools in the Ozark Conference, but a couple of years ago, there was a lot of conference realignment with Springfield schools, with the Ozark Conference, with the Central Ozark Conference. And so we had a lot of schools that were looking to get in different conferences. And so what that impact did for us, it caused us, we needed to look as well, because the Ozark Conference, a lot of those schools were pulling out. So we didn't really have a conference to go to. So we joined the Central Missouri Activities Conference, which is CMAC, and that includes currently, and we're still in this conference for this year, but it's us, the 3 Jeff City schools, so Jeff City High, Capital City, and Elias, Columbia Rockbridge, Columbia Battle, Hickman, and Mississippi. That's the CMAC that we're currently in. We're in year 2 of that. We are actually working with Lebanon and Rolla and Waynesville, and then Superintendent at Springfield. We actually are going to resurrect the Ozark Conference starting in the 27-28 school year. We're excited about that, and nothing against Jeff City and Columbia. But we got Lebanon that's 25 miles away. That's a huge rivalry for us. I can tell you as a high school principal, sometimes I didn't look forward to that Friday night, maybe as much as some others did. But really, it's a really good rivalry to have. And then you think about Waynesville, not 45 minutes away, and Rolla, and getting the gang back together a little bit. And then we've got Springfield Central and Parkview that will come in with us. So we're actually hoping that maybe more schools will see the value in that conference and ask to join. And then I had a couple of different superintendents reach out and say, hey, what's the process look like? So right now we're working to establish bylaws throughout the course of this year. And have a meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks about those bylaws, so we'll get those done. We are excited about resurrecting the Ozark Conference and getting that back together. So,
is it your school that's going down to Arkansas for the first football game?
we are. Why?
Yeah. That the parents kept.
Yeah, that's all. Really, that's based on need, not out of preference. I'll probably say too much right now. We actually, a couple of weeks ago, thought we might be able to make a shift and get a little closer to home, but that didn't happen. And so my preference would not be to go there on week 1. But it was based on need. We're trying to find games with scheduling. And that's one of the things right now too, that our AD was currently working right now. I think he actually went to a meeting yesterday with the new Ozark Conference, activities directors to start scheduling for the upcoming year. A year from now. So not our preference to do that. It's based on need as a whole. And, yeah, we certainly like to stay closer to home.
I just want to say thank you, because right now I'm kind of locked in some different with what I do for a living, some bad issues with hospitals who.
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is I appreciate the stewardship that the district is putting into school buildings and looking at how can we repurpose, how can we add on to, instead of what I think is an old mindset of the only way we can do it is to completely roll something over and build from the ground up. So I truly appreciate the stewardship and the thought process that I know it's painful and I know it's time consuming, but when you're trying to utilize what we have while we build what we need and then we look forward to what we want. Rather than sort of a Disney moment of, okay, it's gone and now we have this new thing rising up without being thought of. All of that entails, not just financially, but what do we do with the students? So I really do appreciate and hearing what you guys are planning and how this is going to. So thank you very much to you and the team and work for that. It means a great deal.
I appreciate that. And one of the things I failed to mention on the restructuring with our outlying buildings, with Osage Beach and Hurricane Deck, we're also keeping fifth grade in those buildings. And as those of you know, Osage Beach, I think Hurricane Deck opened in 2015, I believe. I'm looking at Dr. Hatfield for confirmation, is that right? 2015.
Sounds good to me, it's blur.
But as we look at our facility needs and our enrollment and look at all of that throughout the course of this school year, we also recognize that not only can we have preschool in those buildings, but to offset some of the capacity load in our district, to make the shifts we need to make, we can keep fifth grade in those communities too. And I, I'm sure everybody has their own thought and own feelings about that. But I've heard some really positive feedback from those community members. It's like, hey, we're glad that we can keep our kids in this community because that's just another year. And frankly, 2 years to start preschool, so you can really make yourself at home in those schools and have a solid community feel with those two. So that's another consideration that we had. And thankfully, because of the planning and preparation, we have plenty of room in those buildings to make that work. So.
Well, we seem to have some students here or people here that are close or at the poverty line. How do you deal with that? What special considerations?
About 44% of our students across the district, and that's not as high as it once was across our district. And I'll tell you my personal feeling on that is it's more, but we don't always get the parents to fill out the paperwork to be identified as that. And so a couple things come to mind. One, taking care of their basic needs. So students and families who meet that poverty threshold can qualify for free and reduced lunches, which is a significant help for them to meet their basic needs. And then academically, when your students are below that poverty line, they're what we call a subgroup of students. So we have to pay special attention to that group and others on how they're performing academically, make sure that they have those they need to. So a couple ways to do that.
So literacy is one of the pillars of Rotary.
Yeah.
It's something that's I think important and crucial. And you briefly mentioned focus on that. Worldwide, we're seeing schools from some of the best parts of the world going. You can't keep doing screens. We need to get back to pen, paper, books, the hard bits and pieces of literacy. So what are your thoughts moving forward, since you mentioned that literacy as an issue that you're looking at in regards to that?
Great question. So a couple of things on the literacy piece. So state mandated that we utilize the specific type of instruction. So really it's based on phonics. So over the past 2-3 years, we've incorporated that type of instruction and provided a ton of training for teachers. And what I would say is in making that transition, I would say this is the first year that we really feel like we have a lot of our elementary teachers trained. And that last year was a heavy lift that we had probably 60 or 70 teachers participate in that training to go through that, the phonics instruction. And so we're hoping that those gains will translate as progress. In terms of screen time, if that's where you're going, Mr. Burnett can speak to this. There was actually a bill out there this year that was gonna limit screen time, that was 45 minutes a day for elementary students. That didn't pass. But I think we all understand the intent behind it, and what's the quality versus a screen babysitting a student, right? And so that's one of the things we have conversations about is no matter what you use, whether it's pen and paper or a screen, it's got to be viable and really, really quality instruction. So one of the things that we've recognized and one of the shifts that we're making this year, not a major shift, but a little bit, any of our students in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, they will not have a one-to-one device in their classroom. Beyond that, they will, but working with our administrative team and our teachers, the message needs to be, whatever you're doing needs to be quality, it needs to be valid, and it needs to be worthwhile, not just, and it sounds harsh, but not just as an occupation of time, if that makes sense. So,
As someone who's been in your classrooms, yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
so yes,
Where it's basically just babysitting,
Yeah.
close that tab, close that tab,
Right.
close that tab.
And that's certainly not quality education.
Correct.
But that's not something that's unique to this area in any way, shape, or form.
Correct.
Like I said, I've seen that it's now the shift worldwide, that there's this mindset of we have become too reliant on something that doesn't actually teach.
Yeah. And I don't, I should ready to speak this a lot better than I could. I have an assumption that we might see that come back. Legislatively, so we'll see. We'll see.
Parents was forced for that.
Pardon?
Parents at home were forced to school.
You're not wrong, and you know, on a personal side, my wife and I were out to dinner about a month and a half ago, and my wife is director at State Fair Community College in the State Beach, so we have family of educators, and now we grandparents for a little over a year, and you know, you start to think a little differently. And so we're out to dinner and we see the probably a 6 or 7 year old eating dinner with his grandparents, and not one time did he take his headphones off or put the screen down. And so it made us kind of consider where we are and how we want to behave, and you know, and try to help facilitate not just being occupied by a screen. So yeah, you're right, John. And I'm guilty. Like I probably spend too much time on my phone checking emails and things of that nature. But it's hard. It's hard to use it in the form of work, but I can't put it down. You are. You're like now.
Somebody's who might run right in your front yard.
There's a big push to go back to institutional teaching, like kids don't know how to write cursive.
Yeah.
And or sign their name, kids don't know how to read cursive.
I think what I hear and kind of see in the legislative, the pendulum is kind of swinging back a little bit, a little more traditional versus the push that we had at one point for technology and things of that nature. So.
I had a lunch closing that last year, you know, we to go in and close it. It's the married couple buying their first house. And they didn't know last time. They did,
Yeah.
nobody had ever taught, we had to teach them how to sign their names. It's not. I was 25.
Are there any other questions? It's a sign of a great presentation, lots of dialogue, lots of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I mean, you're gonna be.